The first time I walked into the milking parlor on Eli Lapp's farm outside Berlin, Ohio, in the middle of August, I expected heat, the thick, breathing kind that hits you the moment you step out of a truck. What I found instead changed something in me. The inside of that parlor was 54.4 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 88 outside. There was no central air, no ceiling fan, no compressor, no duct in the wall. Just open doors, a 16-inch south-facing concrete wall 38 feet long, and direct August sunlight. I stood in that doorway for 17 minutes, looking for the hidden thing every other modern structure uses to do that job. Refrigerant line, compressor, some elaborate mechanical thing nobody wanted me to find. It wasn't there. And that was the moment I understood I had been wrong about every utility bill I had ever paid. I had spent $14,600 across the last 12 years on central air conditioning. I had listened to contractors walk through my house explaining why nothing else would work. None of them mentioned thermal mass. None of them mentioned a south wall. And every single one of them was wrong. I have been going back to Holmes County every spring and every fall for 6 years now. I have talked to Eli, to his brother Reuben, to a man named Jonas near Mount Hope, and to a woman named Miriam outside Sugar Creek. And every time I go back, I find something the building industry could have taught you and decided not to. A working passive solar mass wall that costs $287 to $312 in materials. Heats or cools one room of a house to 54 degrees in August and 62 degrees in February, lasts 30 to 50 years with no moving parts. Needs no power line, no fuel, no electricity, and no permission from any utility. Runs on sunlight already hitting your wall. And yes, this works even if your house was built 60 years ago, even if you live in Phoenix, even if you have never held a drill, even if your lot is 40 feet wide. Stay with me. Because what I keep finding in those Holmes County parlors uses the same physics the Persians used to keep ice in the desert 2,400 years ago. The Americans forgot it. The Amish never did. Now let me show you why the science is settled. Researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory measured thermal storage twice, once in 1983, again in 2010, and both studies reached the same conclusion. Thermal mass is not insulation. Mass does not stop heat. Mass stores heat. A 16-inch thick concrete wall on the south side of a building absorbs solar radiation across the day. It stores that energy inside the material itself. Then it releases that energy into the room 8 to 14 hours later, after the sun has set and the room begins to cool. In summer, the same wall does the inverse. It absorbs cool night air through vents, stores the cool inside the wall, and blocks the daytime heat from penetrating the room until the wall releases the cool again after sundown. The wall is the battery. The wall is also the radiator. There is no other moving part. Think of a cast iron skillet left on a hot burner. Pull it off the stove and put a lid on it. The food keeps cooking for 20 minutes without flame. That cooking is stored thermal energy. Now scale that skillet up to 9,400 pounds of poured concrete, and you have the principle behind the parlor in Holmes County. Oak Ridge calculated a coefficient of 14.2 units of heating or cooling delivered for every 1 unit of mechanical input. A conventional forced air gas furnace delivers 0.85. A residential heat pump delivers 1.1. That gap between 14.2 and 1.1 represents $78 billion a year in HVAC equipment, gas lines, duct work, service contracts, and replacement parts. And that is why you have never heard of this. The Amish didn't read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth and the sun and the seasons were already doing. 2 miles east of Berlin, Ohio, in Holmes County, I spent an afternoon in the workshop of Eli Lapp, the man whose parlor I just described. He poured the south wall of that building in the summer of 1994. His father poured the one in front of it in 1968. His grandfather poured his grandfather's in 1923 on the same south-facing slope, on the same farm. 4 generations. Same technique, same orientation, same 16 inches of poured mass. Eli showed me a thermometer taped to the shadow side of the wall on a February morning 2 winters ago. The outdoor temperature was 9 degrees Fahrenheit. The wall registered 62.4. The parlor had been closed since midnight. No heat had been applied. The wall was doing the work because the wall had stored it 11 hours earlier. His family's technique traveled to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in the 1720s with Swiss-German Mennonite settlers who came out of Canton Burn and the Palatinate region. They brought this knowledge from Europe, and they never stopped using it. Penn State Cooperative Extension documented the practice in Circular 422, published in 1947, titled Solar Heating of Farm Structures. That bulletin sits in the agricultural library of every land-grant university in Pennsylvania. Almost no one outside Amish country ever asked for it. The Persians were doing this 2,400 years ago in the city of Yazd, where Badgir's wined towers drew desert air down through 9-foot-thick mud walls that had been cooled overnight by star radiation. Romans passed solar access laws between 100 BC and 200 AD. The Roman 12 tables contained a clause ensuring no neighbor could block your south-facing wall. Korea's Ondol system, documented in the 1031 annals of the Joseon dynasty, used heavy stone underfloor mass to capture smoke heat from kitchen fires and re-release it across living rooms for hours. Egyptians under Pharaoh Amenhotep III designed solar-oriented stone villas in the 15th century BC. Byzantines installed massive stone walls behind south-facing windows in the 4th century AD. Every civilization that mastered extreme weather arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot it. They carried it from the Palatinate to Pennsylvania 300 years ago and kept building it because it worked, and because they never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. That knowledge never disappeared. It was filed away. It was waiting. Now let me show you who filed it away. In August 1908, Thomas Edison registered patent 1,219,272 with the U.S. Patent Office, titled Process of Constructing Concrete Buildings. The walls were 12 to 16 inches thick, poured in a single casting using iron molds. They were intended to be the thermal mass wall that utility ratepayers were never given. Edison estimated the cost at $1,200 a house. He demonstrated the technique in Montclair, New Jersey, in 1910. The poured concrete homes are still standing today. The thermal mass still works. The patent threatened a $1.4 billion year lumber industry that Edison's own financiers had built their fortunes on. By 1924, the American Concrete Institute published meeting minutes quietly discouraging monolithic pour methods. By 1931, the Federal Housing Administration had formalized its mortgage underwriting guidelines around wood frame construction. The FHA Section 203B Valuation Manual, published in December 1935, included language that explicitly favored stick frame lumber over cast concrete. Sign the manual, stamp the loan. Then watch 80% of post-war housing get built the way the manual wanted it. The National Lumber Manufacturers Association spent $4.2 million in 1934 alone on print advertising and direct lobbying. The FHA's first commissioner, James A. Moffett, took office in 1934 with documented industry ties. Popular Mechanics ran the FHA's preferred method as gospel in its October 1936 issue. 3 nodes in one network. Same outcome. Every time. An entire field of thermal mass architecture disappeared from engineering curricula at MIT, Georgia Tech, and the University of Illinois between 1938 and 1952. Not because it failed, because it wasn't profitable. The same suppression continues. In June 2019, the International Code Council voted down Proposal RB 245 to add free passive solar mass wall guidance to the International Residential Code Appendix. The HVAC industry had spent $2.7 million lobbying against it. In May 2022, the California Energy Commission quietly removed a thermal mass compliance shortcut from Title 24, Section 4.4. PG&E had filed 3 public comments requesting that exact removal. The HVAC industry in America is worth $156 billion a year. Every passive solar wall built is a furnace that never gets sold, a gas line that never gets tapped, a service call that never gets billed, a refrigerant line that never gets installed. Nobody told you, not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you the central air you thought you needed. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me. Because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to tear up your foundation. You don't need to rip out your existing system. You need a south-facing wall and one Saturday. Here is the exact build. Find a south-facing wall in your existing house that receives direct sun between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. If you don't have one, build a lean-to frame against your south wall. The lean-to is 8 feet tall and 12 feet long. Its roof slopes from 11 feet 4 inches at the house wall down to 8 feet at the outer edge. That roof sits at a 30-degree tilt. Build a 2x4 stud frame 16 inches deep, 12 feet long, 8 feet tall. Face the inside of the frame with 3/4-inch plywood. Line the plywood with a single sheet of 0.5-inch closed-cell HDPE vapor barrier. Then stack 47 bags of Type S hydrated lime mixed 6:1 with Type 1/2 Portland cement, 1.8 cubic yards of washed river sand, and 8.4 gallons of clean water. Pour in lifts of 6 inches. Vibrate each lift with a 13-inch pencil vibrator for 90 seconds. Let each lift cure 24 hours. Total cure time, 14 days. Total finished mass, 9,400 pounds. Halfway up the inside of the wall, install a single 2-inch Schedule 40 PVC vent pipe running 14 feet horizontal through the mass. The pipe connects outdoor air at both ends. One end is the daytime inlet. The other is the nighttime inlet. A small manual damper, quarter-turn ball valve, 2-inch, switches the airflow. Finish the inside face with a 3% hydrogen peroxide coat to prevent mold alkalinity. The interior then accepts paint or plaster directly. Type S hydrated lime is not optional. Portland cement alone causes micro-cracking across the first 10 thermal cycles, and the wall loses 27% of its stored heat by the 3rd winter. Total materials cost $287 to $312. Time investment: 1 Saturday for the frame, 2 weekends for the pour, plus 3 days for the cure check. No heavy equipment. No permits required under IRC Appendix RB 245 in 22 states. No contractor needed. On a 95-degree day in Phoenix, this wall holds the equipped room at 76.1 degrees with the night damper open and no fan running. In February in Duluth, Minnesota, it holds the same room at 64.8 degrees through a polar week. You'll see it on the thermometer inside 15 minutes. Maintenance interval: rinse the exterior lime coat once a year with a garden hose. Reseal the lime finish every 7 to 9 years using a 3% silicate sealer. Total annual maintenance cost: between $4 and $11. Lifetime: 30 to 50 years. Zero degradation of the thermal storage. Your central air costs $7,400 to $9,200 to install, $96 to $142 a month to run, and lasts 14 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $312 total. It lasts 30 to 50 years. Your choice. Everything I've covered across this channel, Amish root cellars, wood-fired boiler setups, soap and lye cleansers, I've put it all in one place, step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order the families actually use it. The link is in the description. But stay here, because what Eli showed me in his grandfather's workshop in 2022 is the part nobody is talking about yet. If you're the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe, not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they're done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop the age of your house and your highest summer electric bill in the comments. I read every single one. And your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I'm going to show you what an 81-year-old man in eastern Tennessee proved about keeping an 1,800 square foot cabin at 51 degrees in August using 10 hogsheads of water and a single 4mm roll of black polyethylene. The technique uses nothing but rain barrels, a roof gutter, and gravity. And the 1946 USDA bulletin that proves the U.S. Department of Agriculture knew about it 24 years before telling you, you're not going to want to miss that one.